Hi, it's Jill Foster here, designer for Penny Black, and today I'm going to share with you some tips and techniques for die cutting our intricate creative dies. Penny Black dies are high-quality thin metal cutting dies manufactured in the USA using 100% steel and work in most major brands of die cutting machines. I love using these intricate dies on my projects as they are so delicate and they really stand out on a card. At first, these intricate dies can sometimes seem a little difficult to cut out, but with the following tips and techniques, you'll be cutting them with ease. As a side note, in the video portion of this, I will be demonstrating my cutting on a Sizzix Big Kick, but like I said, these tips and techniques will work on any of the most popular machines, for example, the Cuttlebug. And in the description box below here on YouTube, I've listed the cutting sandwiches for other popular machines. So to begin, the simplest solution, if you're having any trouble getting your intricate dies to cut cleanly, is to run them through the machine more than one time. So get cranking. Go back and forth a few times. I like to pass over and back at least twice. This will loosen up the fibers in the paper along the cut lines, and it's amazing what a difference this simple step will make. Now let's talk about shimming. I promise we'll get to the video portion of me cutting, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about shims. The reason shims are added with die cutting machines is to raise the platform up so more pressure can be applied to the die. Every machine is different, and even among the same machine types, the amount of shimming is going to vary depending on how old the machine is, how much it's been used, and even the condition of the cutting plates. Personally, I use cardstock shims with my machine, which, like I said before, is the Sizzix Big Kick. It's quite old and very well loved, so I found 2 cardstock shims are needed. If you're needing more than 2 cardstock shims, you may prefer using a metal adapter plate. The difference between a metal adapter plate is that cardstock shims can become compressed as you're running them through the machine multiple times. So you may need to replace the cardstock shims from time to time. With a metal adapter plate, this can't happen, and the pressure will be evenly applied to the die each and every time. So if you're interested in a metal adapter plate for your machine, I recommend just a Google search of metal adapter plate and your die cutting machine name, and that should give you results if you're looking to purchase one of these. But like I said, I have found cardstock shims work fine for me. Let me show you how to determine the correct shim for your machine. As you do this, be sure to pay attention to how the handle on your machine turns. Use caution. If it's too hard to turn, then your shim is too much. I'm going to demonstrate shimming with our die cut interlocking. This is a large background size die with multiple cuts. You'll see here there's tons of cuts on this die. It's very, very intricate. And you can see with the correct shims, it's easy to get a clean cut. So what I'm going to do is I already know what works for my machine, but just to show you how I determine this is I'm starting with the machine and I'm using the platform and it's on tab 2. And I am going to then put a cutting plate. And then I'm going to take my die and I tape my die using removable adhesive, so something that's not going to pull up the paper when I'm done. And the reason I do this is that if I need to do any manipulation after it's been run through the machine, everything will stay aligned. So if you need to add a shim or turn the die at all, if you tape this on here, then you won't have any trouble doing that. And I'm going to put mine cut side up. You can do it either way on this machine, but I prefer cut side up so I can see how things are going. So I'm going to crank this through. Sorry, it's a little shaky here. This isn't usually the place where I die cut, but this is where my filming setup is. So I'm going to crank it through once, and then I'm going to crank it through forward and back another time. And we'll see what we have here. And you can see portions of it have cut, portions of it haven't, so it's like a lighter outline of where it should have cut. So I know I need to add a shim. I always like to start with one at a time to determine on my particular machine what I need. That way I don't over shim the machine. So I've put down one piece of cardstock, cut about the same size as the cutting platform, my cutting plate, the die with the paper still attached because I taped it, another cutting plate, and I'm going to run it through. As I'm doing this, I'm paying attention as I crank that it isn't too hard to crank because that would tell me it has too much of a shim there. I'll do more than one pass, so I'm going to go forward and back 2 times. and we'll take a look at what we have. So you can see some of the pieces are already falling out. So that to me is a good sign. We're getting it cut. But I still see a couple of spots where, like right up here, where it's a little bit lighter. It'd probably be okay, but I'd have to go through and poke those out. And I like it when the pieces are just falling out and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to add one more shim to my machine. And like I said, my machine is really old. So that's why I think I need 2 cardstock shims. If you have a newer machine, it hasn't been used very much, you might not even need a shim. You just want to test it out like I've done here. So I'm going to put that back in, same sandwich as before. So platform on tab 2, 2 sheets of cardstock, a cutting plate, my die and paper, and another cutting plate. And I'm going to run that through. And like before, I'm going to go forward and back 2 times at least, just so I know everything cuts cleanly. And I will take a look here, and you can see the pieces are falling out. Normally I'd just take this right over my trash can and bang the metal against the trash can. You can't hurt the metal on the die and get rid of all those little pieces. But for the sake of a video, I'm just peeling it off here and making a big mess. And you can see how cleanly that has cut. I'm using Neenah cardstock, so a nice heavyweight cardstock that is used very commonly for card making and scrapbooking. Only one little one I had to poke out, and I just did it with my finger. So it's beautiful cutting just by getting the correct shims for the machine. Now usually once you've found the right shim height for your machine, that's all you're going to need to do to get great results. But if you still have a little difficulty or a pesky area that isn't cutting easily, here's 2 more tips that will take care of that. The first is rotating the die and running it through the machine again. And this works because every machine has a sweet spot, so to speak, where the pressure exerted on the die is the greatest. So by rotating the die, it ensures that all areas of the die hit that sweet spot. So let me show you this with our intricate creative die whirl wreath. And just a note, my machine, I don't need to do these last 2 tips. It works fine with just the correct shims, but I'm just going to show you how it works, even though you're going to see it cuts just fine without doing these tips. But like I said, every machine is different. And so I want to be sure that you know all of these great tips and techniques. So here's a look at that die, and you can see it's a very detailed and the cuts are very close together. So we'll get started. Again, I'm going to tape this to my cardstock. I'm using the Neenah cardstock again. And by taping it, when I need to rotate the die, everything will stay aligned, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to use my cutting sandwich that I've now determined that my shims. So I have my platform on tab 2, then my shims, which normally I just leave right there in my machine. And then I'll put a cutting plate, my die. I can put it either direction, but I like cut side up so I can just easily peek and see how things are going. And then another cutting plate. And I'll crank this through. And just like before, I'm having it go through more than one time. So I'm going to go forward and back a couple of times. And you can get a peek there. Like I said, mine cuts just fine with just the shims. I can see pieces are falling out. I'm just going to take a look here. But let's say you had a portion that didn't cut, or it wasn't cut where things are just falling out. It's really easy to work with. Just turn it a little bit like I've done there. And I didn't cut this close enough, so I'm just trimming that so it'll run through the machine. Put that cutting plate back on top and crank it through again. And then I'm going to take a look. And you can see the pieces are falling out. It's cut really well. But let's say yours wasn't. Turn it a little bit again and just run it through again. And you'll notice, even though mine, I could have stopped after the first pass without the rotating, if you look here at the end, once I pull this out, the die just falls right out. So it makes it so easy. Even if you have a real clean cut, turn it a couple times and run it through. You don't have to poke any excess pieces out, and you're just ready to go. Finally, one other simple technique that can help ensure your intricate dies cut perfectly. And this is what I would call the zoning in with your shim technique. This allows all of the die cutting pressure to be placed on a specific area of a die, usually the most intricate spot or the center of a large die where the machine typically doesn't apply as much pressure. Your machine will be different than mine, so you might find those areas that don't get equal pressure. So here I'm going to use our Creative Die Prestige. And I wanted to show that these dies can cut even really thick, even the intricate dies, thick paper. So this is 140-pound watercolor paper that I'm cutting. And I'm taping it down. And here's my sandwich, tab 2, my 2 cardstock pieces, my cutting plate, the paper and the die, and then I'll crank it through. And I'm going to come back, take a couple of passes through, and let's take a peek. So remember, this is our watercolor paper. You can see the perimeter is cut perfectly fine, and the interior actually is cut pretty well, but like I said before, I like it when things are just falling out and it's really easy to get your die, the piece that you want, and move on with your card. So here's how we can get the pressure on that very most intricate part of the die. So I'm just going to take 2 pieces here of cardstock, and I'm just going to trim them a little bit smaller so that they fit behind the area that needs more pressure applied, that more detailed area up in the top. I'm going to remove my 2 cardstock shims because I want all the pressure to go where I'm putting these smaller cardstock shims. So I've got my cutting plate on tab 2, or my platform on tab 2, a cutting plate. These 2 cardstock shims, I'm going to put them underneath the area, that most detailed area. I'll put another cutting plate on top, and then I'll run it through. And we'll come back. And just like before, a couple times through makes it so much easier to remove everything. And we'll take a look. Now I would normally just take this right over my trash can and kind of bang the metal just to see how much is cut. I can see a little bit up here. The pieces are coming out pretty good, but there's a little bit up at the top that I just want it to pop out real easy. I don't want to go in with a pokey tool to poke it out, which you can do. It's not a big deal, and every once in a while you need to. So I'm going to run it through again with that zoned in shimming, but I'm also going to rotate it. So you can combine some of these techniques to get a really nice cut. So now I'm going to get pressure from a different area of the machine, plus I have the zoned in shimming underneath that really detailed portion, and I'll run it through. Now once you've done this a couple times, you don't have to do as much experimenting. So it is much faster. You've already got your shims there. You'll see where in your machine that you get the best cutting, and it won't take as much time. But it just takes a little bit to get the hang of what works best with your machine. And you can see here how easily those pieces just pop right out, and I'll remove the die. And again, this is that thick watercolor paper. And there's just no problem at all with getting that really intricate, beautiful die cut. So as you can see, these are just a review of the tips and techniques. Remember to get cranking, run it through your machine forward and back a couple of times. You may need to use a shim and determine what the correct shim height is for your specific machine. rotate your die if needed, and you can also zone in with your shim. As you can see, cutting intricate dies may take a couple extra steps to determine exactly what works best with your machine. But once you've done this, you will be set to easily cut all of Penny Black's intricate dies. And for me, it's really worth it because of all the realm of possibilities these unique dies can offer your projects. To view all of Penny Black's creative dies, I've included a link below in the description box. Thanks so much for watching, and happy die cutting!